You guys, today I am here with Dr. Kate D, but she does go by Dr. D, but we're going to call her Kate. Kate, tell everybody about who you are. This is so exciting.
Oh, hi. Well, thanks so much for having me on today. So I'm Dr. Kate D. Yes, and you can totally call me Kate. That's fine. Um, I am originally from New York City, and I spent 16 years of my medical career doing breast cancer, and about 10 years ago pivoted and just quit everything and started over and opened a medical spa. I got really inspired to do that. It's like a whole separate story. I'm happy to share that. But so I've been doing that for 10 years. And over the last 10 years, the medical aesthetics industry has just absolutely exploded, which has been great in some ways and has been a total disaster in other ways. That much of that growth that we've seen are people doing it illegally, completely illegally. And so there are people practicing medicine without a license. There are people practicing out of the scope of their license. There are people ordering fake product off the internet. The stories are outrageous. And so I wrote a book about it, and I got that published earlier this year. And part of that, I decided to do my own podcast. So I have my own podcast. So both the book and the podcast are called Med Mayhem. And I've just been trying to get out there to educate consumers because as much as I love the industry and it's fantastic and there are great treatments and I could talk all about those. Hopefully I know this is a video podcast, right? So I'm 56. I have no filler in my face. I
Okay.
do stuff though, laser and whatnot, and so hopefully I don't look 56. My teenagers say I don't, so that's good. And they would not hold back, okay, if they, you know.
Right. Kids are
Um,
great.
but I could talk about the good things, but I want everybody to understand what the dangers are because I think that very few people really understand the risks and they go into a place and they think it's legit and they think that the med spa industry is regulated. And in fact, it really isn't. And it is it is like out of this world how insane the industry is. So I've been trying to just give people the tools, the knowledge, so that when they walk into a new place, let's say they want Botox or they want laser or something, they can ask the right questions and make sure that place is going to serve them well and make them look great and not cause them any injury or harm or, God forbid, death. There have been people who have died at med spas too, and it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is insane to me. I really Okay, let's just back up because so many things. Okay, why did you transition from a breast cancer PhD to now medical aesthetics? Like what was
Right.
going on in
So
your life?
Okay, so first of all, what I used to do, I was a radiologist.
Okay.
I call myself a recovering radiologist. I don't do that anymore. I
Okay.
loved it, but mostly I read mammograms, breast ultrasound, breast MRI. I did breast biopsies all day long, other kinds of breast imaging procedures.
Mhm.
And I diagnosed breast cancer, and I would take people through their diagnosis and I love that job actually.
Mm,
And it was all, doing needle procedures and talking to women all day, but it wasn't particularly very happy, right?
mhm,
And I had two friends who had been doing aesthetics, and they had encouraged me to look into it. They were like, "Oh, it's Kate, it's right up your alley," and but it's just so positive and happy. People are really, it's a happy space, and I had spent
mhm,
16 years in a not as happy space. And so I thought, okay, well, let me learn from them, follow them around in their practice before they were both retiring. And I just had the best time with them. Like
mhm,
it was so much fun and it really were like these, pretty easy procedures. And for a doctor who does procedures in
mhm,
my career, the stuff that we do in medical aesthetics are pretty straightforward. It's I don't know. So I felt like that was right in my wheelhouse. And it just was a really, fun, awesome thing. And the more I learned about medical aesthetics, I was not a beauty consumer. I didn't do facials, and I've never in my life worn makeup. This is just my skin. I got no
You look
makeup on.
fabulous, by the way. Okay, can we just
Thank you.
comment like
Yeah,
56?
well, um, so, but the more I
Beautiful
learned about it,
skin.
the more I'm like, oh, like if I could use science to
Yeah.
look young and preserve my skin, like I want to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I took the first course and I loved it and I just kind of ran with it. Plus, lasers are all, it's all about physics and
Mm.
radiologists in deep inside our souls, we are physics geeks. So that was really, really fun. And
Okay.
so I took a few courses and just ran with it basically.
That's
And
so cool.
I put up a shingle about 10 years ago. I just had my 10-year anniversary actually.
Oh.
I think it was maybe yesterday.
Oh my
But
gosh, how
yeah,
exciting.
from founding Glow. My spa is called Glow Medi Spa. And I just kind of grew and organically. I didn't really do a lot with any kind of advertising or marketing. And it happened to be at a time when the industry was, growing and about to really explode. And
Mm.
I think what um what I'm what I'm trying to point out is that, for every person 10 years ago like me who was really interested and got training. I have, I mean, obviously, and I'm an MD and I have a license to practice
Sure.
medicine, so I can practice medicine. But what happened was, you know, everyone and their dog thought, "Oh, this is great," and most people don't look up the laws, So, like, let's say a nurse who works in a dermatology office learns how to inject Botox. And they're like, well, now I can go start my own business injecting Botox. Well, that's not legal. Nurses are not allowed to practice medicine on their own. They can only practice under a doctor. The
Mm.
decision making is all the doctor, and the nurse can carry out the doctor's orders, but nurses can't practice medicine. And
Right.
actually, that's a felony. So, practicing medicine without a license in any state is a felony. And that goes whether you're a nurse
Oh.
or an esthetician or just
Okay.
a person off the street. I don't know if you've read about these crazy things where people like ordered, you know, construction grade silicone or
Oh my
concrete and like
God.
injected it in people. They're like, oh, we can do this and make money. And it's like, well, that's incredibly dangerous, right? And
Oh my God. This is
anyway,
crazy. What
yeah.
is wrong
And,
with people?
well, and the thing is that in my estimation, at least half of the med spas that are out there
Mhm.
are functioning illegally in one way or another.
Oh my
And it's
Lord.
hard to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because you walk in and you see someone and they're in scrubs. How do you know? How do you know what their license is unless you've already, looked them up? And then how do you know they're really operating legally? And it's hard to know because how is everybody supposed to know the laws?
Hmm.
I had a patient a couple months ago now who is a lawyer, and she
Okay.
was coming to me for Botox for the first time, and she had had it before. I was like, oh, where'd you go? And she's like, oh, well, there's this girl down the street from my office. And I was like, oh, a girl. So, was she a nurse? What kind of
Hmm.
license did she
Hmm.
have? And this lawyer was like, oh, I actually don't even know that.
Oh.
And I think that, you know, as no lawyer would go to a lawyer who didn't have a degree to practice law.
Hmm.
But it's just, you just assume that the
Yeah.
place is being regulated by somebody. Because if you go get a facial, say, or a
Hmm.
brow wax
Hmm.
in an esthetician's office, they have to have a cosmetology license. They have to have a spa salon license. They get inspected by the cosmetology board.
Yep.
The cosmetology board is looking at the cleanliness, the lids on their garbage cans, the little wood sticks they use for waxing, and does that have a
Hmm.
lid? All the little things, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and if they don't, then they'll lose their license, right?
Right.
Well, for a med spa, nobody's doing inspections. Um,
What do you mean?
nobody's looking. Yeah. So I mean, we do facials in my office, and we do have a cosmetology. The reason I know all this, we do have a
Yeah.
cosmetology. We have the license from the cosmetology board, and they do come inspect here and there. But they only inspect my facial room. They don't inspect like the room right next to it is the laser room where like we have
Right.
way more dangerous stuff going on there, right? And
Yeah.
then when the other medical rooms where we're handling blood products and we're doing, other medical treatments
Hmm.
and nobody's inspecting those. I mean, obviously I care because it's my license on the line, right?
Right.
And I have
Right.
all the proper licenses and training and the people who work for me do and all that. But I think that because people are used to walking into the hair salon or the
Hmm.
the esthetician's office and knowing that that's all highly regulated, that a med spa is too, and it's just not. And
Wow.
yeah, so
So
there have
who would be the people to come and inspect? Would it be the medical board
well,
or
that's the problem. The medical board does not inspect offices. The medical board is in charge of doctors and PAs licenses, and that's what they manage, right? And so
Mm.
if there's a complaint about a doctor or a PA that goes to the medical board, they would have to investigate that. The
Oh.
nursing board is in charge of nurses' license, so RNs and nurse practitioners, and that's what they deal with. And if there's a complaint about a nurse, it would go to the nursing board. But there's nobody who's going to inspect an office, right?
Right, right.
Now, there is OSHA, right? So
Hmm.
if a employee reported somebody, then they could go and inspect, the working conditions. And there are a lot of laws about laser safety. So if you're operating lasers, there are laws there, but there really is not a governing body that comes in and inspects laser clinics or medical spas. Um,
Okay.
I'd like to change that. So, I mean,
Yeah, you
part of
should just do your own board here, girlfriend. Like, let's do
well,
it.
so I actually am in the process of trying to create with other doctors who are doing aesthetics nationally a nonprofit that would be able to certify medical spas and not to rate them and not to say, oh, this one's great and this one's not great, but
Right.
just to have them prove that they're doing everything legally. And I think that that's
Yeah.
really critical. So, I mean, there are many components of this. So, for people who are really interested, I this is all in my book and all written in like for consumers, right? So it's really
Yeah.
easy to consume. It's very kind of I think it's funny, a little scary, but mostly funny. And each chapter has questions to ask if you were going to go to a med spa. But basically,
Yeah.
the real questions, the to be legal,
Hmm.
um, each person who's providing medical services in the spa has to have a license, and it has to be active, and they have to continue to be get continuing education, all that. You have to look them up because there are plenty of people who say, "Oh yeah, I'm a nurse," and they're not. There was just a woman who was arrested in Massachusetts she was an esthetician, but she was pretending to be a nurse. And someone finally looked her up and reported her. And
I
it
am in
turns out
awe.
she was purchasing product illegally off the internet and just injecting it in people. So everything about what she was doing was totally illegal. But so one is looking up the person who's doing the procedures. But then the next thing is who's their medical director, right? So if you're
Mhm.
a nurse and you're doing Botox, well, you're not allowed to do that on your own, right? The medical director is usually a doctor who you're working for. Well, who is the medical director? And you got to look them up, okay? Make sure that they're actually there. I always say ask to have an appointment with the medical director because if the medical director is actually medically directing, meaning they're actually
Hmm.
there
Right.
directing the people who work under them, then they will be bookable sooner or later, right? They might be booked out for several months. They might not be there every day of the week. That's fine. But if they're never there, if you try to make an appointment, it's like, oh, sorry, Dr. So and so doesn't, doesn't see patients here. Then to me, that's a red flag. That
Mm.
means that person's not really there, right?
Right.
And so there are mid-level providers, so nurse practitioners and PAs are both a master's level of education. And so
Hmm.
RNs is usually, you don't even need a college degree to become an RN, but many of them are. Um, but nurse practitioners and PAs can do a, an exam and prescribe Botox and prescribe the other treatments that we have. Um, in most states, they're working under a doctor as well.
Hmm.
In some states, nurse practitioners have independent practice and they're not actually practicing medicine, they're practicing advanced nursing.
Okay. Okay.
That's semantics,
Yeah, yeah.
but basically they can um, practice independently so the medical director doesn't have to be there when they are practicing. But
Sure.
nurses can't. Nurses have to have somebody who's seeing the patient, making the medical decision, prescribing the treatment. So I always say, look up the medical director and try to make an appointment with them. So all of that is really important. And then the other thing is this legitimate product thing. So
Mm-hmm.
there were recently, or a few months ago, in the headlines, which you might have read, all these people sent to the hospital with botulism
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
in 22 states, or no, 11 states, sorry, um, there were all these people ordering fake Botox off the internet and injecting it, and it was too high a concentration, and all these people went to the hospital. Um, so how do you know that the place is getting legitimate product? I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully if they're doing the other things correctly, they're also getting real Botox and Dysport or whatever, but you can ask to see the vial and
Okay.
check at least the lot number and the expiration date, um, that, that it's real, legit
Yeah.
product. It can be hard to tell, but if they're cutting corners in one area, you have to be a lot more worried that they're cutting corners in other areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
all of that's really important. And then the other thing that's really impossible to tell is that there are laws governing who can own a medical practice. So like, you, Krystine,
Hmm.
can't just open up a med spa and hire a nurse. Like that's not
Okay.
legal in most states ban what's called the corporate practice of medicine. So, like, a business can't direct medical practice, right?
Okay.
And that's for ethical reasons, right? You
Sure.
wouldn't want a business deciding whether you were going to get your, you know, blood pressure med or your heart attack
Oh my
treated or
God.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I did know, being on the hair world, the cosmetology side with the aesthetics and all of that, I did know that as far as medical practitioners, so it's, doctors and PAs, like you can't tip them. Like as a
right.
client, you cannot,
Yes.
they do not accept
Yes.
gratuity, but an
Yes.
esthetician can. But that was
Right.
like the extent
But
of what I
but
knew.
actually, you really aren't supposed to tip an esthetician on a medical treatment. You can tip them
Oh,
on a facial or waxing, but you're really not supposed to tip them on, say, laser hair removal.
okay. And what is the
So
reason? Because maybe people don't know.
um, yeah, so that's a little bit complicated, but I know because it really stems from federal funding for medical treatment. So
Mm,
there's not
okay.
supposed to be any um, side collection of monies for any medical treatments that would change the amount that you're getting. So, for instance, if you're getting a treatment done that's covered under Medicare, right, it
Hmm.
would be considered Medicare fraud, right?
Oh.
Um, and so, how does that apply to aesthetics? Well, it obviously Medicare is not covering anything in aesthetics,
Hmm.
but but typically you are not supposed to add additional fees or collect additional monies for medical
Right.
treatments. And so it's really considered a faux pas too. Like if
Yeah.
and this I've seen this a lot because we have software that hopefully if it's programmed right, it will
Hmm.
ask for a tip only for the facials and we don't do a lot of
Right.
esthetician level stuff. We do facials and some light peels and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And so that tip screen is supposed to not appear for anything medical,
Hmm.
but yes, appear for the facials. Um, and it's really complicated because the software that we use has these automatic updates, and every once in a while, an automatic
Hmm.
update will happen, and some functionality changes, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden,
What
so
is
that has
the
happened where the tip screen has changed, and all of a sudden, I'm having to figure out how to undo that. But generally that is really not okay. And I've seen people complain like my dermatologist, you know, I went to my dermatologist and a tip screen came up and I'm like, "Oh, that's not cool."
Oh, no. What is the program that you use, if you don't mind sharing?
We use a spa software called Zenoti, and
Okay.
it's very popular in salons and spas and med spas, kind of all over the world, actually.
Okay.
And it works well, but it's super complicated.
Sure, sure.
Um, yeah,
Okay. So, all right. This is so great. I love all of this because this is not talked about at all, if ever. So,
and
anyway,
it should be. It
and it
totally
should
should be.
be
We can talk.
totally.
Yeah.
I could
Well,
talk
I
about this
can.
stuff all day. I just found out new information for salons and spas. And as far as booth renting is concerned, at least for the state of Florida, at
Mm,
least it was new to me. I don't know about anybody else, but it was about the taxes. All of a sudden now, it might be new because my accountant didn't even know about it. If you are renting a space as an esthetician or a cosmetologist, you have to pay property or sales tax on your
on the
renting,
rental, yeah.
on the rental plus whatever your is going on in your county. And I was like, what? And so I had to call to make sure. So, yeah.
Well, so locations are constantly changing those laws about what sales tax gets applied to. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that is true of a lot of different kinds of services now, where,
Mm,
it used to be only certain products and other products were excluded. Like some
right.
places will exclude food and medicine and, whatever, baby formula,
Yeah.
but everything else there's taxed. Well, like when my kids were little, their
Mm-hmm.
karate lessons were not subject to sales tax. But then
Yeah.
one year, all of a sudden, there was an announcement, sorry, prices are going up because now we have to collect sales tax on karate lessons. And sales
Wow.
tax in Washington state is really high because we don't have an income tax here. So
Mm.
the Seattle sales tax is right now 10.25%, which is even more than New York, which is like
Yeah.
hard to imagine. I know. But that's because we don't have income tax. So
Sure. It all bundles up.
yeah.
What would you tell estheticians who are wanting to go into the Medi Spa arena? Like, what do they need to do? What education do they have to
Well,
follow?
so that's a really good question. So there are, I believe it's 8 states
Hmm.
that have a master esthetician level certification. And we do in Washington. So I'm very familiar with that locally.
Hmm.
But if you want to work in a medical spa doing medical treatments, okay, most states will not let estheticians do that. You can do facials and
Hmm.
peels and stuff like but you can't become um, like a laser tech. You can't do microneedling or whatever
Hmm.
unless you have. So every state's going to be different.
Yeah, like
But
Florida, we have in order to do micro needling, you and the salon that you're at need to have a tattoo license.
yeah, and that is super different in every state. So the tattoo license is really interesting. In Washington state, you would need to be a master esthetician
Hmm.
in order to do that. And that's a whole, that's a separate certification and a separate licensure.
Hmm.
And if you're a master esthetician, then you can work under a physician and do
Okay.
microneedling. You cannot do it on your own and you can't prescribe it. It's a medical treatment. So
Mhm.
that patient would need to see the doctor or the nurse practitioner or the PA working under the doctor
Sure.
and get an exam, be prescribed that treatment, and then
Hmm.
a master esthetician could carry it out. Okay.
Okay.
And that is true in Florida, in every state. Microneedling, laser, IV drips, whatever, those are all considered the practice of medicine. The practice of medicine is anytime you penetrate through the skin,
Ew.
and that includes the dermis. Okay, so
Hmm.
estheticians are allowed to scrape the outside of the skin, but they're not
Yeah.
allowed to go into it.
Okay.
And so in some states they can get this master esthetician. In some states, I guess they can get a tattoo license. I wasn't aware of that in Florida, but they
Hmm.
have to be under a doctor, and you can't just go to an esthetician and say, I want laser or microneedling, and the esthetician make the medical decision to do that to you. That's not legal. And that's actually
Oh
practicing
my.
medicine without a license. And I think estheticians don't understand, most people don't understand this. It's like
Mhm.
just because you have a skill to do something doesn't mean that you have the legal ability to prescribe it because that's practicing medicine. So it might sound like splitting hairs, but it's not because somebody with that advanced, medical degree has to decide that it's not dangerous for you to have it. What
Mm,
if you have a collagen vascular disease? What if you have lupus? What if you have diabetes? What if you have an immunodeficiency? What if you've
mm-hmm.
got kidney failure? I mean, there are so many reasons why you can't have an IV or why you can't have a laser treatment or other injectables, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
an esthetician has no qualifications to judge those things, right?
Right.
Now, most people walking into a med spa are healthy, but you don't know. You don't know
Right.
who's got one
Yeah.
of those. Those diseases are hidden. Those
Mhm.
diseases don't, they're not on people's sleeves. And
Right.
so you have to be able to know, especially for IV. IVs are the most dangerous thing at med spas, and those are exploding. Those are really
Yeah.
popular.
They're
But
everywhere,
that's
even my gym. And I'm like,
and I will tell you that's the fastest way to kill somebody is to
oh.
hang something in their IV that either they're allergic to or is going to kill them. And there have been many people who've died in med spas from IV drips. There was one last summer in Texas that's gotten a ton of press. This woman who was 47 years old walked into a med spa. The woman who owned it and ran it had no license at all. She did have a medical director who was never there, so one of these absentee medical directors. And this woman did not know what she was doing, um, and hung electrolytes that had too much potassium in it, and it stopped this woman's heart like immediately, and she died. And and I'm sure this her name was Amber Johnson. I think she
Hmm.
belongs in jail personally, but I actually don't know. As of this day, I don't believe any charges have been filed, but I do think there's an ongoing investigation. But
Hmm.
I'm sure she was horrified. I'm sure she didn't really know that she was about to kill somebody, but that's why practicing medicine without a license is illegal, right?
Yeah.
Because you can kill somebody. So the IV bars, I think that's insane. You shouldn't be able to prescribe yourself an IV. And basically, young, healthy people without a disease, you don't need an IV. Now, if
Mm.
you're hungover and you're really dehydrated, I get that, right? And I
Right.
understand like the one set up in Vegas where
Right.
people have partied all night long and they slept from 5 in the morning till, 3 p.m. and now they go get their IV so they can go party again. In a lot of ways, I think that that's better than going to
Yeah.
party without the IV. Okay, that's fine. But you have to be assessed and make sure you're
Mhm.
really that IV is not going to kill you or set you into renal failure. I mean, there are a lot of people with issues with their heart or kidneys that they wouldn't be able to get that kind of IV, and it's not a no-brainer at all.
Yeah. No.
And the
So,
other thing that people like think is that, stuff you might eat
uh-huh.
that's good for you is even better in IV. It's
Mm.
not, and way more
Oh,
dangerous, right? So, I mean,
okay.
there's a case of, this person who died from an IV infusion of turmeric, like a IV place put turmeric in their IV. Now,
No.
and this person just had anaphylaxis and died because you just think about it. Do you want to
Yeah.
grind up a spice instead of putting it in your tea? Would you like to put it in your veins? Like, what are the chances that's going to work out? Okay. Like,
Well, turmeric and ginger, they're already very, very strong.
right.
And you
Like,
can't have too much of it. It burns. Oh my
right. So
Lord.
definitely
Okay.
just put that in your tea. Don't have an IV with it. It's not
Don't.
advised.
No. Okay, so for these estheticians who want to go into this, you would tell them to just go get educated or go be a
Well,
doctor,
yeah, I mean, it really
right?
depends on your state, right? So
Okay.
if you live in a state that has master esthetician level certification, then fantastic. You can go do that. I do think
Hmm.
that it's very, very competitive.
Hmm.
Um, it is really hard to get a job. And so the problem is that there are people who have the certification who are out there looking for a job. There aren't very many.
Mm,
And I do think that's one of the pressures that
mhm,
creates all these illegal places because now this person, well, I got trained in this. I want to, pay off the amount of money I've spent on getting this degree or this
mhm,
certification.
mhm.
They feel they should be able to. They can't find a medical director. They can't get hired as an employee. And so they're like, well, hell, I'll just, um, am I allowed to say hell on your
Yes,
podcast?
absolutely. You can say shit and fuck and
Okay.
everything else. Go
I was
for it.
gonna do that, and then I was like, it wasn't really sure. So, like, what the fuck? I'm just gonna set up a shingle and set up a business, and they do, and and they don't look up what the laws are necessarily, right? And they may or may not know that they're doing it legally or illegally. But what you find out very quickly is you cannot order the supplies unless you have a medical director. So they find out, oh, I need a medical director. But then they think as soon as I get that license number of the medical director and they can order the supplies, they don't need the medical director anymore. So usually they pay a medical director some nominal fee every month to rent their license, and then they can order the supplies, whether it's IVs, whether it's Botox, whether it's laser equipment or
Mhm,
consumables for their microneedling. Um, you know, most of those companies only require you to submit the medical director's license and their signature once. They don't require this recertification every year. So even Allergan and Galderma, the makers of Botox and
mhm,
Dysport, they only require it in the beginning. So if there's a med spa in the Seattle area that is owned by an esthetician, um, and she was doing all kinds of stuff in her place, and she had just a rotating series of medical directors who, for whatever reason, didn't last very long. And years ago, I interviewed one of them. It was a nurse practitioner who had been their medical director for 1 year. And about a year later, so she had not been working there for a year, she was interested in setting up her own Allergan account to do Botox. Um, and when she tried to set up her account, Allergan said, "Oh, you already have an account." And she was still listed as the medical director of that med spa, who still had not hired a new medical director and was still using her license to purchase all the products like Botox, even though they didn't even have a medical director. And she had no idea this was going on. And
sure.
so I think that is really common as well. And this is a very nice spa. Okay.
Mhm,
It's very
mhm.
big. They do hair, they do aesthetics, they do spa and salon plus med spa. But they've had this, actually, I don't even know. I don't know right now if they have a medical director or not. But over the years, many of those years, they've not had one.
Wow, this is
Yeah.
insane. Like, I wasn't expecting all I am getting an education. Like, if you're watching this or you're listening, my mouth is open the whole time. Um,
Well, I mean,
okay.
that's why I honestly, like, for the first 5 years of doing this,
Mhm.
I just could not believe how many people were
Yeah.
doing this stuff
I mean,
illegally. I
I
just
was thinking about
blown
this,
away.
like I maybe was it yesterday or maybe this week? I had flittering thought of like, oh, I wonder if we should do like a med spa next, for my salon and spa because I'm in partnership with my mom. And I was going to present this idea to her. And then now that I'm speaking with you, I'm like, wait a second. There is so much more to it than just being like, da 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 da, this is what we're doing now. This is very interesting. So,
Right.
what do you tell? So, okay, so you have it in your book. These clients need to purchase your book to really get to know like what to look for before they go to a med spa, right? They can't just like walk in and be like, inject me, right?
Well, that's what most people do, but I don't advise it because,
No more. I'm not doing
it
that.
might be fine, right? You might get away with it, but I
Yeah,
mean,
but that is such a risk. You might get away with it, but that's your face.
I
Like,
know. Well, you can also listen to my podcast, which I would love to have you on, but it's
yes,
also
that's
called
true.
Med Spa Mayhem. But I do
I
talk
love it.
about all these things on that as well,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and really dive into some of the stories. I interviewed this one woman who when she was 23, went to a med spa in California. And actually,
Okay.
California has more laws regulating med spas than any other state. But
Okay.
this place was totally illegal. This girl didn't know. She's 23. She wanted a B12 shot. The woman at the med spa talked her into doing these fat dissolving shots kind of all over her body that had B12 and also um, deoxycholic acid, which is a bile acid that dissolves fat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also called Kybella. The Allergan makes the
Okay.
name brand version of this. Anyway, this
Okay.
was she was injected all over her body. And unbeknownst to her, this was fake Kybella that was ordered off of Alibaba and was contaminated with mycobacterium. And it caused a rip-roaring, flesh-eating bacteria. It almost killed her. She was in the hospital for over 3 months. She is scarred all over her body now. And nothing happened to the spa owner.
What?
Nothing happened. She was not prosecuted. She was not arrested. I mean, and
How is
and
that possible?
yeah, well, I mean, so
That is one
prosecutors,
heck of a waiver to have.
isn't it? So it's scary. So
Yeah.
she was practicing medicine without a license. That's a felony. She was ordering fake product off the internet. That's actually a federal crime of
Oh
some
my
kind.
God.
Importing, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know the law,
The legal term. Yeah.
but that's a federal law that she's violating. And then essentially she committed assault with this stuff, right? But nothing happened to her. And the prosecutor in California said to her, you went there of your own volition, right? Like you chose to go there. And
Mm,
somehow that was, and that's what I'm trying to convey is we're all choosing to go there. We don't, people assume that it's safe.
right.
And
Right.
so, if that's the attitude of the prosecutors, well, you chose to go to this place. Didn't you do your
Mm-hmm.
homework? Well, I'm trying to give people enough information that they can do their homework and they
Yeah.
can investigate and they can make sure, okay, this place is legit. Um, and it's hard. It's hard. It's even
Yeah.
hard for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we're in this industry where everything is pretty. And if it's pretty and it's clean and it smells good, oh, it
Right?
must be legit. Let's do it. Pump
Yep.
me up with
Yeah.
Botox. Yeah. It's the thing. Okay. So I feel like we talked a lot about the negative stuff, but it's very important, right?
Right. And I'm happy to talk about the positive because there's so many great
Let's
things. I mean,
yeah,
I don't
let's
want people to think that it's all negative. Otherwise,
right.
I wouldn't be doing it, right?
Right. No, like
Yeah.
we're very happy people. But here's one question that I do have is would you recommend, I mean, of course you are a med spa and you are medical, you're a doctor. Um, but would you recommend people to do like the regular facials and like light chemical peels before going into the more medical stuff or just like jump right into the medical stuff?
Right. Well, it's a really good question. So, the really quick answer is you don't really need facials to preserve your skin for anti-aging.
Okay.
Um, Facials can accomplish a lot as far as skincare and jumpstarting your skincare. So I do talk a lot in my consultations about skincare. I personally think that it makes more sense to use medical grade skincare, which can be a little harder to access. Most estheticians can't have access to that. But my definition of medical grade means that the company actually does laboratory studies to prove that what's on the label that they say is in it is actually in it, and they do studies that show that it's effective.
Mm,
Um, Skincare industry is not regulated. You can put anything in a tube and sell it, and if it's topical, the FDA doesn't care what's in it.
mm,
And you can call it a retinol cream and have no retinol in it. You can call it, it. But anyway, so I personally feel that a really good skincare regimen is like putting your skin on a good diet.
mm,
It's gonna help your skin stay healthy, and that means you're exfoliating the dead cells. You're providing your skin the antioxidants and vitamins it needs to fight the sun damage. You're
mm,
hopefully using a serum that stimulates collagen. Okay. And then a really great moisturizer for your barrier and a great sunblock in the morning. And hopefully, if
Okay.
you can tolerate it, a retinol at night. Like that's kind of my overall
Okay.
guidelines. But um, do you really need a facial to jumpstart that? Not really. Facials are really helpful because it will do a deep clean. It will
Mm,
exfoliate. It will, extract your pores. You can accomplish a lot. You can kind of get a jump start on your skincare. Once you're doing a really great skincare routine every day, do you really need facials? It's not necessary. It's a really lovely thing to have,
mm,
but it's not necessary. The other, besides putting your skin on a really good regimen,
mm-hmm,
the other critical thing for prevention
mm-hmm.
is everyone over 30 should do something to stimulate collagen
Oh,
about three
that's
times
me.
a year.
Okay.
So, because by the time you're 30, the little cells in your dermis that make collagen and elastin,
Mm-hmm.
they go dormant and they don't make more. And your
Cool.
body breaks those things down at 1 to 2% per year. So, from 30 on, if you don't stimulate those cells,
Mm,
then you're losing collagen at about 1 to 2% per year. So, it's just slowly thinning. And
mm,
as your skin thins, then it's no longer thick and springy, so it doesn't bounce back. It starts to retain the wrinkles and starts to sag. So
right.
ideally, about 3 times a year, and we say 3 times a year because when you do microneedling or laser, um, those cells get stimulated for about 4 to 6 months, and then they're back to being dormant. So that's why we say every 4 months or so, you do it again. And so that's why microneedling has become so popular amongst the kind of 30
Right.
somethings because
Because
they
it,
haven't quite lost very much yet. And if you do microneedling 3 times a year, you're going to maintain your collagen. Okay.
mm-hmm,
Um, Now, once you get to be my age, I see a lot of patients who are, my age in their 50s and
mm-hmm.
everything's kind of hanging down already and they want
Yeah.
to pick it back up. Takes way bigger guns to do skin tightening
Mm,
than it does to prevent the loss. So I love getting people in their 30s. They're like, do this now. Well, because this
yeah.
wasn't around when I was in my 30s. It didn't exist.
No, this is all like new stuff, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
but when you ask about like, should you jump right into medical? Yes and no, right? They've served different purposes,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
taking care of your skin, super important. Okay.
Mm,
But then preventing collagen loss from 30 on, really important.
mm,
And those are my two big core things that are part of prevention for anybody over 30. And then everything else is kind of addressing very specific issues, whether certain lines you can really only treat with a neurotoxin, like
mm.
the 11s up here.
Yeah.
I think mine
They're,
maybe wearing off a little bit.
yeah.
For me, this is the big one. Like
Yeah.
I didn't start doing any, but well, I really do Dysport for me, but till about 10 years ago when I started doing this, and my 11s were really deep. And when I started
Yeah.
doing it, I had people say, oh wow, Kate, you look so much happier. You look less angry now. And I'm like,
Oh,
thanks.
like, thank you so much.
Um, but yes, certain lines are only treatable with a neurotoxin, and I
Okay.
can explain why if you want.
Yeah.
And then other things like sunspots and rosacea, melasma, acne, we address all those things kind of
Hmm.
separately because those are all kind of separate issues.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So cool. Okay. So, we probably already went over it, but just for a more organized way, what would you tell somebody who does want to start their med spa? What's like the top three things that they need
For
to do a med spa,
to,
to establish a med
to
spa? What do they need?
to start a med spa. Well, so if you're not a doctor,
Hmm.
or a nurse practitioner in one of the states that has independent practice for nurse practitioners. Um, you can, so you and your mom, right?
Uh-huh.
You have a spa, right?
Right. Right.
You would have to form a business called a MSO or a management services organization. You, as a non-doctor, can own the spa-like parts of the med spa. So you can
Mm-hmm.
have the space, the front desk, the equipment, the computers, the software, your headphones, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
You can uh, do the payroll and all that.
Sure.
You would have to then contract with a doctor to provide the medical services in the spa.
Mm.
And the money collected actually has to go to the doctor for doing the medical services. You cannot get paid for medical services. So you
Okay.
set up your MSO and you can be like the business side of it. And then you pay the doctor to run the medical part. But the money specifically has to go to the doctor, and then the doctor pays you for running the whole show for them.
Okay. So
That
kind of
would be
like a landlord situation.
more than a landlord because
Okay.
you're not just taking rent. You are
Right.
running it. You're doing the media, you're doing the
Mm-hmm.
website, you're doing marketing, you're
Right.
talking to patients, you're doing all of the management of it.
Hmm.
So it's not just renting out the space, but
Okay.
you're not allowed to fee split with medicine. So you
Mhm.
can't pay the doctor a percentage. And it's more that the doctor is paying you whatever, however the arrangement is, to run the spa, and they're practicing medicine, and then it's their practice,
Mm.
and they have to be able to have medical oversight of any providers inside the medical part, right?
Okay.
Now you could, as a spa owner, have an independent contractor come in and do like some medical stuff, but that would be illegal if you collected the money for it.
Hmm.
So so the way most people do, oh, I'll just have, a nurse come in once a week. So many problems with that, right? Because
Okay.
you can't just collect money and then pay the nurse. Not allowed. And then also, whoever the doctor is, they have to have medical malpractice. And
Mm.
so that has to be covered. Nurses don't have malpractice, right? They work under a doctor. So
Right.
if someone works at say a dermatology office and they come to your spa once a week or something,
Hmm.
they're not covered by malpractice. They're not covered by their doctor. That's not legal. You're not even allowed to pay them. So, like, too many problems with that,
Right.
right? And
Right.
I think what happens is that's typically the route that you see happen, right? So, oh,
Hmm.
I've got a salon. I've got an empty room 1 day a week. Oh, I can just have someone come. Almost always that's not legal. And I will tell you, like, most malpractice would not cover that. So,
Mm.
even a doctor, um, some malpractice might cover a doctor going to that salon,
Right.
but absolutely will not cover the PA or the RN that works for that doctor to go to that salon. Will not be covered. And so, God forbid anybody has a thing and
Hmm.
you will not be covered.
Oy,
Um,
oy, oy.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's 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 complicated, but
Sure.
it's not that it's not possible, but you need a really good healthcare attorney to help you
Yeah.
kind of
To
do that. And
establish.
there are plenty of med spas that are MSOs that are legitimate and that are
Mhm.
done properly and really well and high quality. It's not the MSO that's inherently bad at all.
Hmm.
Okay. I'm not saying
Right.
that at all.
No,
It's
no.
just there are many that are just set up in name only and really, the MSO collects the money. The MSO pays a medical director who's never there, a nominal fee to
Hmm.
rent their license, and then their lower level injectors and whoever providers are being paid by the MSO, not legally, and I don't know. So it's a very
It's
difficult thing to tease
involved.
apart.
It's
Yeah.
involved. You can do
I
it.
will
It's just involved.
Yeah, I would say you can tell from looking at someone's website pretty well. Like I was looking at a website recently of a med spa in Arizona, and the owner is a laser technician, which that's not legal, right? They must have an MSO, right? And then the highest level of anybody listed all the staff was an RN. They did not have a medical director on the website. There's nobody above the RN who works there. So, and there are some services that will provide telemedicine consultations.
Mm.
So maybe some new patient comes in and they do a telemedicine consultation for 5 minutes with a nurse practitioner who's in another state, who then says, "Yep, you're good to go."
Hmm.
And then the RN does stuff. So technically, they're trying to dot their I's and cross their T's legally, but that's not really what the law was meant to do, right? The law was meant to
Right.
set up so that someone who knows what they're doing sits down with you, looks at your skin, and does an assessment, takes a history, and then provides a treatment plan. It's not really meant to, be like
Hmm.
a 5 minute. video only where you can barely see. Could you assess my skin from where you are right now? I can't. I mean, I
No,
can't really assess yours.
no,
I
absolutely
don't
not.
feel comfortable doing telemedicine
Yeah.
skin assessments myself. I always do it in person.
I like to
Um,
feel, touch, smell, all those things, especially with
yeah.
your body. You can smell things that you're like, you are not healthy. What's happening here? Why not? So,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
So time is flying. So you are an author with your book, which is what is it? Med Spa
Right.
Mayhem.
Medspa Mayhem.
The podcast, same name, Med Spa
Yep.
Mayhem. You have Glow Medi Spa in Seattle.
hmm
Go check her out. But what else do you have going on that people can get involved with?
The people, well,
Clients or estheticians or whatever.
yeah, I mean, honestly, if anyone in your audience has a story to share, good or bad, if they want to reach out to me and potentially be on the podcast, that would be
Yes.
amazing. I'm sure your audience has a lot of great
Yes.
stories. And we cover everything in the entire spa industry, not
Love
just
it.
medical. I've
Love it.
it's been really fun. But if you go to drkatedee.com, so it's drkatedee.com,
Mhm.
or you can email info@drkatedee.com. Tell me your story. I'd love to talk to you. I'm trying to get these messages out as much as
Mhm.
possible.
Mhm.
And if there are any people in the industry, either on the industry side or medical, who are interested in getting this national nonprofit organization established,
Yes.
I'm also open to that. That is in the beginning stages, but I'm really hoping to make that happen.
Yes.
That's a big undertaking. So I have a few friends who are a lot more, kind of famous than me who might be able to help me get that going. But that's in
Yes.
the early stages. And I am trying to get the movie made. So we'll see. But
Professional Beauty Association, we kind of need them to come in on this. And I'll give you their information too. But
that'd be fantastic.
this is something that I ask everybody, right? But what is one question that you wish I would have asked that I did not? And how would you have answered?
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, pertaining to what I do.
Mhm.
Um, I think the one question would be, so what do you do for your skin?
Oh.
And do you want me to answer that?
Yes, go for it. My little
Right.
puppy wants to know too. You see
So,
him?
yeah, because I personally think that if you start early enough, you can prevent a lot, not everything. There's a lot of things we can't do anything about as you get older, but you can prevent a lot of change in your skin. And when I turned 50, the year I turned 50, I did a series of RF microneedling.
Mhm.
Um, and the device I have in my office is called Genius, but there are many different kinds of devices that do that. But what that does is it's kind of like microneedling on steroids. It's like many orders of magnitude more powerful, and that will actually remodel your whole dermis, create a lot of collagen and elastin. Will actually thicken and tighten your skin. So the year I turned 50, I did 5 of those. And we generally recommend about one per decade of life. So, uh, you know, and then I've done
Okay.
about one every 6 months or so since then. And we do laser resurfacing at the same time. So that
So
is my
cool.
main thing. I'm trying very hard to keep my skin from drooping.
Yes.
And so that's my main thing. I have no filler in my face.
It's amazing. So
So yeah, I'm
beautiful.
working on
Yeah.
it. It's as I get older, it's a little like, oh my God, is this gonna keep hanging in there? But yeah, so far
Do,
so good.
do you pour collagen, like those collagen drinks, and like you drink them?
No, I don't. I mean, collagen is healthy for you, but it's just one source of protein. The thing is, when you
Mm.
eat collagen, your body breaks that protein down into amino acids and short little, um, short chain peptides, and you absorb it through your gut. And
Mm.
no collagen gets pulled in and put somewhere as collagen.
Okay.
Eating collagen doesn't really do much. Those studies are very there's really you know so yes, protein is good.
Eat more
um
steak.
yeah, well, I mean, eat protein, and the main thing is to
Protein.
eat all the amino acids. And
Right.
so if you're vegan, there are a couple of amino
Yeah.
acids that are not real prominent in the vegan diet. You need to supplement that.
Hmm.
But for the most part, most as long as you get enough protein, you'll be able to make your collagen. Actually, having vitamin C as a vitamin
Hmm.
supplement,
Hmm.
vitamin C is actually necessary for for your cells to make collagen. So actually, eating vitamin C is probably more important than eating collagen.
Collagen.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's so cool. Well, Kate, I'm like,
Science is cool, man,
yeah,
okay?
it totally is. It totally is. Thank you so much for being here. I know a lot of my audience, you guys, you're going to have it on replay. There's so many good tips and information out here. So thank you again so much for being on the Beauty Pro podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's been really fun.